Six presentation from what we're doing in terms of policies and programs, what the challenges are, what the bottom line ought to be. And I take it from Mohammed Madoun, which is basically achieving ecological equilibrium in the Sahel and addressing the underlying stressors. But also we've talked about the centrality of water, its management. We've seen a good practice of how to do that. We've also talked about nutrition and talked about homestead production. We've talked about fortification. We've talked about AGIR and all the different programs that we have, irrigation work by IFPRI and the others. So basically, we didn't talk about land per se, but achieving ecological equilibrium would have a huge component of land, and maybe we can hear a little bit more of that in the discussion. Now we have up to 3:30, so about 25 minutes. I would like to ask that in asking your questions, perhaps to really be precise, go straight to the question if you can. If it's one sentence, it's even better. The room is full, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who would like to say something. So the more time you take, you're really preventing one of your colleagues here to have something to say. So we hope you'll help us get a real nice in-depth debate by having pointed, clear, and sharp and concise questions. I would like, if it's okay with the panel, take a first set of questions. And then if there's a question directed directly to one of you, you'll answer it. If there's one that's floating, I'll see who best could answer it in the group. But let me open the first list of 5. Do we have mics around? Okay. 5 questions. I'll start from my left in the first row, and then I'll jump and I'll go to the next. So that lady there, and then Tim Williams, and then the gentleman here. Okay. Those 4, and then I come to my board member, and then I open another 5. Another 5.
So I'm lucky.
Yes, you're lucky you got in first.
I'll try to keep it short.
Yeah.
My name is Christel Bultman. I work for CARE in West Africa, and a lot of my work is on resilience building in the Sahel. I would like to ask those of you who are involved in AGIR, we've mentioned it many times. We heard something about the objective. But could you talk to its strengths and maybe also challenges that are being faced in this process that is so important? And then I would like, as an add-on question, to ask particularly Fatima maybe to comment on how she feels the AGIR process is succeeding in really integrating the gender perspective.
Excellent. Good question, clear. So let's go to Tim.
Tim Williams. I work for the International Water Management Institute, and I think the panel has done a good justice to the mandate of my institute, which is Water for a Secure World. My question really is, nearly all the presenters pointed to the centrality of water in improving resilience to drought and resource scarcity in the Sahel. But that water is going to be in short supply going forward. One, the effect of climate change will affect water availability. Secondly, there is growth in urbanization and economic development in the region, which will decrease the amount of water going to agriculture. To what extent are the regional economic bodies looking at the competing use of water and how that will influence resilience to drought going forward?
Perfect. Thank you, Tim.
My name is Matias Boger. I'm representing a German NGO called Welthungerhilfe. We're also working in the Sahel. I was glad to hear from Fatima Diasso about the social protection program, which is apparently underway from the CDAO. I would be interested to hear a little bit more how this program is actually implemented by the member states and what is done concretely so that the most vulnerable and the most marginalized people who are maybe most in need of resilience programs actually can participate in these kind of programs.
Very good. Good question. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Tim Waits. I work for DFID. In the past, our sort of strategy for the Sahel was to write out big checks to aid organizations when there was a humanitarian emergency going on. Can I just give some information about how we're moving away from that, just very quickly? We're putting in 3 regional programs, just about kicking off now. One of which is very relevant because it's helping the World Bank and governments to develop these social protection programs. But we are putting money in to try and make these programs more flexible to drought and crisis. So the sort of risk financing mechanism we're seeing in the PSMP, we're trying to look at what the design aspects could be and see whether these programs can flex when there are droughts and stresses. The second program is Braced, which we have 11 NGO consortiums who are designing programs at the moment. And these are looking at addressing resilience, building resilience to long-term climate, and disaster risk reduction is in there. So I'm really hoping that these NGO consortiums are sort of talking to your institutions and to the governments and to other partners. And then finally, we have multi-year, I think it's a 4-year humanitarian programs, which will be at the bottom, which will be there to be able to address when other systems can't cope. So that's information. My 2 questions were going to be about Agir and safety nets, and they've been asked already. With the safety net programs, I mean, Fatima, I think, what do you think is the potential to get that sort of flexibility within the programs, as well as doing what I think is the day-to-day job of the program, which is the cash transfers? I mean, do you think there is capacity to be able to do things that the Productive Safety Net program is trying to do? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Then we're going to take, yes, Dr. Kaba, and then Joanna, and then we'll
Thank you very much.
go to the answers. Yeah.
I think what we are missing is the human aspect of the drought in the Sahel. There's been massive displacement of people to the urban areas, and this has caused another problem, which is the urban poor. The urban poor has increased, and I do not hear from many of the speakers what sort of strategies are being put in place to respond to the urban poor as a result of the drought that we had. Secondly, the urban poor, when coming to the urban areas for their own survival, have developed massive peri-urban agriculture. And that peri-urban agriculture, most of us know, their source of water to irrigate or to water their horticultural things are questionable. Are we looking at the food safety aspects of this massive urbanization, massive peri-urban agriculture? Are we addressing this?
Okay, very good. Thank you. Perhaps what we could do, we can ask Commissioner Atuga to deal with the questions around water. And we can ask Hamadun from sales to deal with a question about Agir, strengths and weaknesses. We can then ask Commissioner Sow to talk about social protection, the capacity of implementation and partnerships, and the aspect of gender in Agir. And then the others, if they have one thing or two to say about the urban poor and the peri-urban agriculture, vulnerability among those population groups and what to do about that. Commissioner Atuga, would you like to start with what the competing water needs, scarcity, and how you're going to deal with this?
Well, like I said earlier, water is the critical element for vulnerability in Sahel. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But how do we go about doing it? We differ. We have all opinions on it. I remember that for one discussion we had earlier last year, people have said that big infrastructure for, water, keeping water, too expensive. But I'm wondering, what is expensive for a human being? What are we making or generating resources for, if it's not for the livelihood, the better livelihood of people? It might cost billions of dollars to have these infrastructure to keep water in Sahel. But in the long run, in my mind, it will be beneficial to having those infrastructure. You've seen what the guy just showed earlier today. There are so few things that can be done at a small scale, which can also enhance, harvesting water for agriculture. Your idea about the urban poor, the water they're using in the cities sometimes pose problem. Most of the time they use water that's well polluted to irrigate, their crops and to make them. We have to address that problem also if you want to have food that is safe for consumption, and that's not going to, in the long run, to intoxicate the masses in the cities. It is important. How do we go about financing those? I believe that the talk is going on in our region at least, and most of the politicians today believe that somehow we have to get that route, get some big infrastructure in. It is going to be difficult to mobilize the international community on that because in the past those infrastructures have not been run very well and have cost a lot of money and are not efficient enough. We can learn from our past. We can learn from difficulties we had. We can learn from mistakes we made. But that does not mean that these things are not important for the long run. Water, if it's not, is critical for 2 points. One, like I said earlier, even in the good season when you have the amount of water needed has fallen, if it has not fallen during a good period, evenly in time and in space, it's still a problem for, having the agricultural sector prosper in the Sahel zone. These are things that we have to think of. We have to think about it. We have to do things, to have water in the long run. If we don't have water, we cannot continue to rely on rainfall and agriculture to make the people from Sahel resilient. I don't
Very
think
good.
so.
Thank you. I think that probably part of the solution will have to do a lot with small-scale irrigation. The large majority of Sahelian farmers are away from the main water basin. I would love to see a master plan for small-scale irrigation, looking at water availability, scarcity management, and how it can be mobilized and leveraged to help bring down the impact of drought and other things. Maybe that's something that IFPRI will be interested in talking about with sales.